The Tunnel to Towers Foundation honors the sacrifices of America's heroes. Heroes like U.S. Army Specialist Andy Keith Kingsley. Andy was part of the 82nd Airborne Division. He received various awards and decorations, including a Purple Heart. While deployed, Andy was catastrophically injured in combat. Andy and his family received a mortgage-free smart home from Tunnel to Towers. But many more heroes, like Andy, need your support. Donate $11 a month and amplify your impact by donating your car or land. Go to T2T.org.
He's at war with woke.
Joe Concha
thinks liberals are a joke.
Joe Concha.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Welcome, everybody, on this lovely Wednesday. Starting to warm up a little bit. Maybe the snow will finally melt here in the New York, New Jersey area by Easter or so, but it's nice to go out without a coat before. I enjoyed that. Something else I enjoyed, obviously, was the State of the Union address last night. For political junkies out there, it truly is a Super Bowl, especially under Trump, because you know the drama is going to be delivered and then some, and sure enough, we saw it. Starting with the president going off on Somalis, basically turning Minnesota into Mogadishu, $9 billion in fraud, all under the nose, or perhaps they even knew. Questions can be asked in that regard. Tim Walz, the governor, Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, and obviously Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. What did you know and when did you know it? Here, Trump looking directly at Omar, who was in the chamber last night. Something like 70 Democrats decided to boycott because, you know, that screams maturity and certainly shows that they're fighting Trump by running away. Okay. Anyway, here is cut number 2. Trump going after Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota and looking right at Omar when he said it. Cut 2, go.
The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the USA, and it is the American people who pay the price in higher medical bills, car insurance rates, rent, taxes, and perhaps most importantly, crime. We will take care of this problem. We're going to take care of this problem. We are not playing games.
That last part clearly was off prompter. In other words, that was not in the speech. And again, looking right at Omar when he was saying it, she started to yell back. She was nearly expelled from the State of the Union, but Speaker Mike Johnson decided that that would probably only give her the headlines and the sympathy that she obviously, and attention for that matter, she was looking for. Meanwhile, this was a very key moment in the speech because, I mean, this backs Democrats into a corner completely, where Trump asks everybody in the chamber, obviously Republicans are going to do it, but again, looked over at the Democratic side of the aisle and said, okay, stand up if you think the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens and not illegal aliens. Okay, that's a pretty easy test. That's like saying, hey, are you against cancer? Stand up if you are. And even here, Democrats couldn't do it. And trust me, the campaign ads will write themselves from now through November and all the way to the 2028 election. Here is the president. Cut number 3, go.
So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
Yeah, so you hear the applause there, but that's only from, if you're looking out from the president's perspective, only the left side of the chamber stood up. The right side sat on their hands, to which that certainly got the president's attention. After the applause died down a minute later, this is cut number 5. Cut number 5, go.
Nobody stands up. These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy.
That's the only word that you really can use there. And I remember when I interviewed the president for my book, that's the exact verb he used then, as or adjective, I should say, that he used then as well. Crazy. These people are crazy. Because I asked him, why would you run again if you had all these headwinds against you as far as the court system being weaponized, the justice system being weaponized against you, obviously a hostile media that's never going to give you a fair shake on your record or any of your policies, and obviously the fact that you figured in 2020 that the other party had cheated, so why didn't you think they're going to do it again in 2024? And he said, Joe, I have to run because these people are crazy. Exactly what he said. And sure enough, he won every swing state and the popular vote. And this is something that, again, if you told me 5 years ago in 2021, February or January, that Donald Trump would be the 47th president, I would have said, I just don't see it happening. But sure enough, the greatest comeback ever, as the book says. Meanwhile, this was interesting. Here you have the president talking about an end to secret gender transitions. Again, another easy test for Democrats to pass. That, in other words, if your 10-year-old wants to, I don't know, transition from being a male to a female or vice versa, should at least the parents know about this surgery? And Trump wants to ban it. And obviously Democrats, I guess, want to keep it because they didn't applaud this line either. Cut number 4, go.
But surely we can all agree no state can be allowed to rip children from their parents' arms and transition them to a new gender against the parents' will. Who would believe that we've been talking about that? We must ban it, and we must ban it immediately.
Again, this should be a 99-1 issue as far as parental consent on surgeries that can change your kid's life forever. That leads to many suicides, by the way, after the fact. Meanwhile, here's Trump going after Nancy Pelosi, this was absolutely delicious because this was one of the few times that there was bipartisan applause around a Trump proposal, which is to ban those in Congress, those in the Senate from trading stocks, because obviously they have inside information that the average investor does not have. So if a big military contract is going to Microsoft to make night vision goggles, for example, well, there are some people on the Armed Services Committee, for example, who would have knowledge of that contract, therefore know that it would push up a stock like Microsoft once that deal is announced for, hundreds of billions of dollars or whatever it may be. And yet, for whatever reason, Nancy Pelosi was against that for a while because, as you know, she's worth more than $100 million along with her husband, despite being a congresswoman for decades, where you get paid something like $174,000 a year. But if you look at the stock trades of the Pelosi's, she makes Gordon Gekko look like an amateur. We'll put it that way. And I mentioned the Microsoft example. Literally, that happened where Pelosi's bought Microsoft stock, and then this big government contract is announced for night vision goggles, and the stock goes up, and they dump it just at the right time before it went back down again. Boy, it's as if they knew what was going to happen. Anyway, here's Trump going off on Pelosi, and cut number 7, go.
They stood up for that. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Did Nancy Pelosi stand up if she's here? Doubt it.
Doubt it, indeed. Meanwhile, Pelosi was asked after the State of the Union what she thought of the speech, and this goes exactly the way one would think. On CNN, of course, cut number 11, go.
I thought the speech was lazy. It's one thing to acknowledge patriotism and people getting well and everything when you had absolutely nothing to do with their courage or the rest, but you spend an hour and a half doing it. What is the state of the nation?
Oh, so her criticism was that there was too much patriotism? Isn't that kind of a good thing? That if you celebrate the country in terms of, hey, the border's now essentially closed, it's secure, something that did not happen under 4 years of Biden and Pelosi being Speaker of the House, by the way. Iran no longer having the ability to make nuclear weapons, that's probably a good thing. Inflation, which was above 9% under Biden, now around 2.4%. That's a very good thing. Wages being up is a good thing. No tax on tips is a very good thing. Go down the line as far as like all the good things that are happening. Peace and prosperity and patriotism in light of the U.S. men and women's hockey teams beating Canada for the gold medal. That's the type of jingoism, quite frankly, that, we haven't felt since, maybe the 80s as far as being vanquishing. Now, it wasn't the Soviets. All right. Soviet. I mean, that's a very dark I liked it when they were the Soviets better. It sounded more formidable then. That was Ivan Drago. That was like truly, the Soviet Union. Now they're Russia again, and that's fine. But Russia wasn't even in the Olympics, so we had to kick around Canada instead, which we did. But meanwhile, you had a lot of people in that gallery that even had trouble standing and cheering for the U.S. men's hockey team who were there, which is an awesome thing. There were even some folks on the air, like Simone Sanders, who used to work in the Biden administration, who actually said that these players should not have allowed themselves to be used as political props. Okay, Simone, what would you have them do? The sitting president of the United States called them after they beat a heavily favored Canadian team, or at least a favored Canadian team, in overtime, the Golden Goal, Jack Hughes, New Jersey Devils, not long into that overtime, one of the most dramatic victories you'll see in hockey, especially the fact that Hughes did it while missing, 3 teeth. That was pretty, that was as ballsy and gutsy as it gets. And yet, when the president invites you to go to the State of the Union, this isn't something you go on StubHub and buy tickets for. Very, very few people on this planet ever get to attend a State of the Union. I know I haven't. I'd love to sometime. I mean, that is just a spectacle. I don't care who's president. I think that would be a very cool thing to see. So I guess her argument was that the Olympic team should have said no. She doesn't exactly explain why, outside of, well, Trump's a fascist and, you got to stand up to fascism, I guess. But that's just some crazy stuff. And Major Garrett, formerly of Fox, now on CBS News, called out Democrats here. So good for Major as far as not applauding common sense things. And again, the campaign ads are writing themselves as we speak. Cut number 12. Go.
We have Major here at the table. I want to bring the conversation back here to our group watching along. Major, you've seen a lot of these, I think, more than any of us. What stood out to you?
Well, look, before the speech, many Republicans said one of the priorities for the president was to make sure Americans after this speech had a sense that the opposition party was off the rails, was crazy, their terminology, not mine. Many of the contrasts the president articulated tonight were to drive that message forward. That not only do I disagree with the opposition party sitting before me in Congress, but I disagree with them so strongly and they with me so much that they can't even applaud basic common sense thing. And that line that you mentioned, that he added to the speech, whether it was ad-libbed or not, the first obligation, American citizens versus illegal aliens, was meant to create a visual moment of perpetual contrast.
A perpetual contrast. No one understands media better than Trump. And he knew he'd get what's called a split screen there, where you see Trump on one half of the screen and then Democrats sitting on their hands on the other. That is something that obviously was well thought out. He knew 3D chess, exactly the way they were going to respond to that. They were not going to stand and applaud that. That would very much anger the far left wing of their base, the AOC, Zohran Mamdani squad wing of that particular party. Therefore, they walked right into that trap, no question. So then Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who I still can't believe she's around. I mean, she's be on TV a lot more, I guess, but there she was back on again last night. And she was asked on News Nation why she didn't stand when Trump said America should take care of American citizens before illegals. And she gave quite the non-answer, is the best way to put it. Cut number 13, go.
I understand maybe on not standing up with the transition issue. I just want to understand this one, though. President Trump said if you agree with this statement, stand up. First duty of America should be taking care of American citizens, not illegals. Why would that be hard to stand up for?
Leland, the president tonight gave a speech that was absolutely revolting.
Okay, so why didn't you stand up for that part again? It's just, I don't know. They don't seem to have any answers around this, because when you're not winning on policy in any way, shape, or form, I guess you just have to, I don't know, take your ball and go home. I mean, Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib walked out in the middle of the State of the Union. As I said, 70 Democrats boycotted and had their own counter protest, I guess. But again, we're not talking about policies anymore. It's just, hey, why didn't you stand up when it came to protecting Americans before illegals? And the only answer she could give after a AOC like is that speech was revolting. Yeah, okay, the original stuff there. Anyway, when we come back on Concha at Night, Senator John Fetterman, he was on Fox News today, same show I was on with Bill Hemmer and Aisha Hasni. And he, again, the voice of reason, stands out criticize Dems who were yelling and protesting and not clapping when they should. Boy, what a breath of fresh air this guy has become. Back with more in just a moment.
Where liberalism is a no-go. The Joe Concha Show, weekday edition. Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
The Tunnel to Towers Foundation honors the sacrifices of America's heroes. Heroes like U.S. Army Specialist Andy Keith Kingsley. Andy was part of the 82nd Airborne Division. He received various awards and decorations, including a Purple Heart. While deployed, Andy was catastrophically injured in combat. Andy and his family received a mortgage-free smart home from Tunnel to Towers. But many more heroes, like Andy, need your support. Donate $11 a month and amplify your impact by donating your car or land. Go to T2T.org.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition. Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. So, I was on Fox News, twice today. I was on Fox and Friends first, which is always fun at around 5:40 a.m. From the basement. I am the original Joe in his basement, and I'm fortunate enough to have a home studio here, so that was fine. And then I went into New York to be on set with Bill Hemmer and Aisha Hosni, who was filling in for Dana Perino. And I saw the guests that were on the show, and I'm like, wow, how did I get on here? Because, let's see, we had the Vice President and J.D. Vance on America's Newsroom. And then we had also John Fetterman, Senator, on there as well, Senator John Thune, and then Kennedy and me. So, yay, all right, kind of a cool show to be on, given the A guest list. Meanwhile, the aforementioned Fetterman, again, this guy I thought had no business being a senator after he had that horrible stroke, had trouble communicating, couldn't answer questions without a teleprompter and closed captioning, and just seemed like a guy who was going to be a rubber stamp for everything Democrat and just wasn't somebody who can think objectively and just represent a state like Pennsylvania, which is positively purple, the way it should. And sure enough, he has turned out to be a very pleasant surprise as far as taking on his own party in regards to their stance on Israel and anti-Semitism and just in general the common sense stuff that old Democrats certainly used to be for. And Fetterman's approval is something like 60% in Pennsylvania. So what he's doing is the right call, and he's not doing it for the approval rating. I honestly think that this is who he is in terms of principle. Anyway, here is Senator John Fetterman with Bill Hemmer before calling out Democrats for just acting, quite frankly, sophomoric. Cut number 14, go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, now it's, the constant kinds of yelling and screaming and holding up signs and for doing all these things. I don't care if it's a Republican or Democrat as a president. Just don't do that. Don't do that. Respect the office, regardless who's in that. And now for me, it's like now when half the people in my party haven't showed up, and then some of them have chosen to just yell and say and scream during all of it. I just don't think that's what we want. And I don't believe, as a Democrat, I think like dancing frogs really moves the ball for us as a party either.
Yeah. Regarding the frogs, so during the counter protest, literally there were, I guess, grown adults dressed as frogs dancing around on the stage. And it's all about that split screen once again, where you have the State of the Union and let's say the U.S. hockey team or a 100-year-old veteran being honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom for a mission that he carried out against the Soviets 50 years ago. And you say, wow, awesome, love it. And then you see the other side and you're seeing dancing Kermit the Frogs. You're like, who are the adults in the room again? Crazy stuff. Anyway, not so crazy is Concha at Night. Well, a little crazy. We'll be back with so much more in just a moment.
It's the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition.
Joe Concha.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
And welcome back, everybody. So, I mean, I really hate giving this person any airtime. It's kind of like my Don Lemon rule I'm starting to embrace more and more. Like, why even bother? This is not news anymore. When Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel criticize Trump. That's not news. It's what they do on a nightly basis. Therefore, it is predictable. Therefore, it is simply not interesting. And by the way, with Kimmel, this is funny. I mean, this guy, he pre-tapes his show because obviously it's hard to get people into a studio for a late night show when, you do it more like late afternoon, early evening. That's a lot easier to do. Plus, you don't want to be working at 11:30 at night doing a live show and have your whole staff. I think Kimmel's staff is well above 100. So what Colbert do, and Letterman did this too as well. I'm not sure what Carson did, but these things are usually taped more late in the afternoon, early evening, those shows. So even though it's late night, it really is late afternoon as far as when these things are actually recorded. But Kimmel actually went on the air last night and went off on Trump's State of the Union. That was at 9 o'clock Eastern time, despite the fact that he was leveling this criticism 3 hours before Trump gave the speech. So he was criticizing something that he hadn't even heard or seen, which is pretty indicative of what we heard all day today on The View or on MS Now and on CNN, where Trump was going to be criticized no matter what he said or did last night. He literally could have had Jesus Christ there as his primary guest, and Democrats wouldn't have stood up and applauded when Trump recognized him in some way, shape, or form. And that's how bad it was. And of course, many in media, not all, certainly we've played some clips tonight from a Major Garrett from CBS News, for example, David Axelrod over at CNN, saying that Trump actually did a good job. And if you look at polls, 67% of those who watched the State of the Union approved of the president's performance. I saw one poll that was very interesting that showed that there's a CNN poll, instant poll, 54% of those who were polled said that Trump's policies will make the country go in a better direction. By the end of the speech, those same people, that had risen 10 points to 64% said that Trump's policies would move the country in the right direction. So it was a very impactful speech. But nevertheless, we have people that obviously they just exist to criticize because their audiences are almost entirely left wing. Therefore, you have hosts, or in the Kimmel's case, comedians, I'm saying that in scare quotes, who are just going to give the audience what they want to hear instead of what they should hear. Now, all of that said, Robert De Niro, okay, who you could go through the litany of movies that this guy has done, and he has such great range. I mean, everybody always thinks Goodfellas, and they always think Godfather 2. And that's a pretty good 1-2 punch right there, right? But then also you go through Midnight Run, and that is a great comedy. And you go through Meet the Fockers, which is profoundly awesome. Meet the Parents, not so much. No, wait, that's right. It was Meet the Parents that was the first one. That was the good one. Meet the Fockers, Barbara Streisand, not so much. Went to the well there too many times. But either way, De Niro is the type of actor, whether we're talking about Casino, that over the years, he does a movie, he owns the screen. And I'm never not going to watch Goodfellas because De Niro has become this raging lunatic. But now when he does interviews, it's just so sad to watch because he runs to places like MSNBC, MS Now, whatever it's called, and goes to somebody like a Nicole Wallace. And he only has one tune to sing. And that is how horrible Trump is. And he did it again with, obviously, Nicole Wallace during this one podcast where he actually teared up and said that we need to bring the country together. Trump isn't doing that. We need to be unified. Okay. The same Robert De Niro who once said this at the Tonys, but let's play the full cut 16 so you get the full context. Cut number 16, go.
I'm going to say one thing. Trump.
This guy should not be president, period.
And when you say that, folks on Fox come after you. I remember the Tonys when you got up there and cursed. A lot of you. Okay, well, this is cable, so it's not an FCC violation, but it is still a Sunday morning.
Yeah, so that's basically what he does. He goes on interviews, he drops F-bombs, and that's it. And then has the audacity to say how he's really just about unity and we all have to come together, and then acts like that. I'd say that is hypocritical. I think that's the only word that I'm going for here. Meanwhile, Joy Behar said she got physically ill watching this State of the Union last night, which one could say that probably a lot of people get physically ill watching Joy Behar on a daily basis. Anyway, apparently election denial is all the rage these days because, well, when Trump did it in 2020, that was a threat to democracy, and we simply cannot have rhetoric right like that where we're calling into question our sacred elections. I mean, these are clean and they're fair and no one would ever cheat. Well, now apparently if now that Trump's winning, and could very well have a J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio ticket winning in 2028. Behar now saying that, well, the only way Republicans can win is by ding, 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 cheating. This is cut number 17. Go.
But when he says that, they can't win, the Democrats, unless they cheat, that is a projection. Everybody knows that.
That's him.
That everybody knows is the Republicans are going to have trouble in November. So that is just a projection. And that's why they have to cheat, because they can't win legitimately.
That's why they have to cheat, because they cannot win legitimately. Who is that? Stacey Abrams? Hillary Clinton? You're not supposed to say those things. Where is the outrage from the New York Times, the Washington Post, Jake Tapper? Who knows at this point? Meanwhile, our friend Bill O'Reilly, he was on News Nation last night, and he made a pretty profound, definitive statement around Trump's effectiveness just in the first 180 days of his second term alone, and puts him, let's put it this way, they have like the AP rankings for college football and basketball, ranks Trump as the number one in the country, above even George Washington. Seriously, this is cut number 18. Go.
Put the 100 days in perspective for us as a historian. Has any president done as much on so many things?
No. Trump has done more in 100 days than any other president in United States history. Number two is Washington. So
not a bad guy to be number two, too.
Okay? So George had to start from scratch to build a federal apparatus. He did, but he did it slowly. It wasn't like Trump. Trump knew the day he was undone, he was going to sign 100 executive orders because Biden was such a disaster in his mind.
Wow. So Trump 1, Washington 2. Remember, Washington was obviously the first president in the United States, and there's lots to do when you're starting a republic. But I can't disagree with that. And I said first 180 days. I meant 100 days, of course. As far as impact from the minute you come into office and the things that you want to change right away, whether that's deregulation, whether that's drill baby drill, which has been a huge part of this administration, and Doug Burgum, deserves a ton of credit being the Interior Secretary and opening up a bunch of oil fields all throughout Alaska, all offshore. And there's a reason why you're seeing gas, for example, in a state like Iowa, where it's down to $1.85 a gallon when it was well above $4 or $5, even in California, $7 under Biden. That's because of domestic energy and not buying our oil and gas from Saudi Arabia and Russia and depending on other countries that drive up the price when we have all that liquid gold right underneath our feet. And that, I think, when you look at the top three things that Trump has done in his second term, obviously the securing of the U.S. border without any legislation, by the way, without 1 inch of wall being added. That is incredible. I think taking out Iran's nuclear facilities is bigger than we realize as far as their ability not to be able to blackmail the West anymore. And then you have to put in there as well, the gas prices coming down to where they are. That is a tax break for everybody. And speaking of tax breaks, if you're getting your tax returns back, I'm sure you're seeing quite the increase then from the Biden years. And remember, it was every Democrat in Congress and the Senate that voted for the Inflation Reduction Act, which drove up inflation, and then voted against the big, beautiful bill, which otherwise would have raised your taxes by anywhere from 25 to 30%. So when people start seeing those tax returns and they start realizing their wages are going up and they're keeping more of their money, that's why people like Joy Behar are now talking about how Republicans have to cheat to win the midterms, because if and when they do, instead of saying probably that's because we have peace and prosperity, and usually the party that has those two things wins elections, instead now they're going to say that Trump is cheating. And how is he cheating again, by the way? Because he wants the SAVE Act to be passed. The SAVE Act that requires voter ID when you go to vote, the most sacred thing we do as Americans. And you simply just have to, just like you do when I was just on a plane last week, I had to show my passport. And if I didn't have to show my passport, I have to show my real ID. And then when I rented a car, I would have to show my driver's license, because you need to show an ID in order to rent a car. But then Democrats say, no, when you go to vote, well, just say you are who you are and we'll go on the trust system. Yeah, that works. And that's the problem, by the way, because in 2016, 70% of Democratic voters, when they were polled after, we're talking like 2 years later, said that they believe that the Russians actually hacked U.S. voting machines and changed votes from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump. 7 in 10 believe that. And in 2020, the number's very similar or even higher as far as whether Biden was a legitimate president or not in terms of being elected fair and square. 2024, then we even hear that, well, maybe Trump couldn't have beaten Kamala that badly. There had to be some cheating going on. Until you have voter ID and until we don't have any ambiguity around elections where we don't get a result in certain states until days later, when Florida and Ohio very easily can get election results out by 10:30 p.m. that night, every state should be able to do that. Voter ID would certainly help, but Democrats, again, are against this, and it's just a whole bowl of wrong, as Joe Concha likes to say. Meanwhile, I thought this was great, by the way. This was President Trump awarding the Medal of Honor to Eric Slover. He was the head of the raid on Nicolas Maduro, doing the snatch and grab of, speaking of illegitimate presidents, Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela, obviously indicted many years ago in this country, a warrant out for his arrest, 8 million people fleeing Venezuela, a humanitarian crisis like we have never seen in the Western Hemisphere. People don't talk about it all that much, but Venezuela, one of the richest countries, should be anyway, in South America because of all the liquid gold that they have underneath their feet. And you don't see this very often, as far as an Eric Slover who ran this raid where no U.S. casualties. You go into a military compound where you have Cuban security using Russian equipment waiting for you. They knew we were coming. We still were able to get Maduro out, and they even read him his rights before they left, got him back on there, and outside of one of our helicopters getting damaged, but not to the point where it couldn't fly out of there, that was as perfectly executed as anything we have seen since the bin Laden raid, and it's great that Trump is acknowledging these achievements, because otherwise these folks end up being anonymous. So here is Trump awarding Eric Slover, the hero of the Nicolas Maduro raid, with the Presidential Medal of Honor during the State of the Union last night, Washington, D.C. Cut 9, go.
Yes, Eric and Amy. In recognition of Eric's actions above and beyond the call of duty, I would now like to ask General Jonathan Braga to present Chief Warrant Officer Slover with our nation's highest military award, the Congressional Medal of Honor.
And that is awesome. But, however, as we go to cut 10, you will hear from Representative Yvette Clarke. She is a Democrat from the state of New York, who thought the State of the Union was horrific. And, I mean, what's with handing out all those medals? Ugh, it's so horrible to watch. Seriously, this is cut number 10. Go.
I was there, and it was as horrific as I thought it would be.
Did you leave early?
Absolutely.
It was like an award show. You get a medal. You get a medal. You get a medal.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that okay? So when the goalie for the U.S. hockey team gets a Presidential Medal of Freedom, basically he's the Secretary of Defense. I always like that joke that I'm hearing, that we have a Secretary of War in Pete Hegseth, my former colleague, and now we have a Secretary of Defense in Connor, the goalie for the U.S. So he got a medal. But yeah, our military veterans getting medals of freedom for risking their lives to protect this country. And this representative and those hyenas that were on that podcast all laughing along with it and mocking it, ridiculing it. We're getting to a point here, folks, where this is common sense versus chaos. And if you like chaos and you like crazy, vote for the blue team. If you like common sense and actually honoring America's heroes, well, I think you know how to vote in that case. Anyway, this is Joe Concha. This is Concha at Night. We wrap this puppy up in just a moment.
This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition.
Joe Concha.
Sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. This is the Joe Concha Show, weekday edition, sponsored by the Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Here's Joe Concha.
Well, Zohran Mamdani, what if I told you a year ago that he would be mentioned at the State of the Union? You would say two things. Your first question would be, who the hell is Zohran Mamdani? And then the second question would be, after I would answer, oh, he's a Democratic socialist who's 33 years old, who's never held a job in his life, who's going to become the next mayor of New York. So after you called me crazy and I said, nope, that's actually what happened, or that's what's going to happen, well, then you'd say, why would Trump be bringing up this guy during the State of the Union? Well, I mean, I just can't get over this whole requiring ID to shovel thing in New York. And look, not just one ID, 2 IDs, and your Social Security card. I'm certain I don't know where that is. Now, I'm certain I can figure out how to get one, but boy, that's a lot to go through to, shovel snow, which is a pretty difficult thing to do, especially when New York got, 18 inches? My mother-in-law apparently got 30 inches where she lives in Jersey. I think we got about 16, 17 inches here, but that's some pretty hard work, and it puts people in the hospital. Strokes, heart attacks, throw out your back, all that stuff. So I don't know. Asking for all that ID and then to do a job like that, and then turn around and also say, oh, by the way, you don't need ID to vote in elections in New York City. Well, this got Trump's attention, certainly, and before probably about 45 million people watching live last night, and God knows how many are watching the clips today. Here is President Trump, who says Mamdani actually is a nice guy, but cut number 6, go.
And even the new communist mayor of New York City, I think he's a nice guy, actually. Speak to him a lot. Bad policy, but nice guy. Just said they want people to shovel snow. They got hit hard. Wants them to shovel snow, but if you apply for that job, you need to show 2 original forms of ID and a Social Security card. Yet they don't want identification for the greatest privilege of them all, voting in America. No, it's no good.
That's right. And then Mamdani, again, I think this was his biggest unforced error yet. To see New York City cops being pelted by snow. And you may remember, I was actually at this game. It was, I want to say, Jets-Oilers back in 1995. The Jets were horrible that year. I believe that was Rich Kotite, and they went 1-15 or something. So they're getting killed at home. And suddenly people started throwing snowballs from the stands and hitting the players and the coaches with them. The problem was that it had snowed, I think, the day before, and then it froze over during the night. So the snowballs were actually ice bombs. And you throw ice at a high velocity at somebody's head, and you could knock him out, concussed. And sure enough, there was one coach that was hit right in the head, and you see him go down like he was shot. And several people had to go to the hospital during that. Well, this happened again, where New York City police officers were pelted with these snowballs, and some were obviously contained some ice or maybe some other things in there that we don't know about, but 2 ended up having to go to the hospital. So you would think the mayor of New York would say, this is unacceptable. We will track down and arrest the people that were responsible for this. You do anything that disrespects NYPD in any way, shape, or form, you will deal with the consequences. Instead, Mamdani just said, I saw the video and it was just a snowball fight. Yeah, snowball fights usually involve 2 sides throwing snow at each other, not one side just getting hit over and over again. And those cops knew if they responded in any physical way with everybody filming, then suddenly they would be the bad guys and probably end up losing their jobs under this administration. But that's Mamdani, who Trump called a nice guy, but boy, I don't know if it's stupidity or he just sees things through a certain prism, but that's a whole bowl of wrong, what happened with those cops. And if I were them, honestly, figure out a way to work in Texas or Florida where you're actually going to be respected and not here under this guy where clearly he does not have your back. Anyway, Scott Jennings on CNN last night echoed what Bill O'Reilly said as far as Trump being what he has been when we look back on Trump, whether it be 2017 to 2021 or now 2025 to the end of his second term. You think about political forces in the modern political era, and it's hard to find somebody who has been this big of a force. This is Jennings on CNN, cut number 1, go.
He is the most consequential political force in the modern era. He is the strongest party boss either party has ever seen. He got more votes each time he appeared on the ballot. He has people that will only vote for him. Now, that's something Obama had as well. He had people that would only vote for him. That puts you in a different realm. I mean, when you're that kind of and 2-term presidents often have this, but you cannot deny, he is the most consequential political force of the modern era of either party.
And that's the thing. There's the rub where, yes, people will only come out to vote for Trump, but then midterms come and then maybe 90% that voted for Trump come out and the other 10 stay home. And Trump could endorse the candidate and they could say and do the same exact things that Trump does. And still some people just stay home. It's just, one of those odd things. And in these races that are going to come down to 1 point, less than 1 point, in key swing districts, that could be the difference between House Speaker Mike Johnson and House Speaker Hakeem Jeffries and Donald Trump being in impeachment hearings for perpetuity. Anyway, we're going to end it on that disturbing note, but we'll be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on WABC in New York and on stations throughout the country. Until then, I'm Joe Concha. 2 words for you. Bye-bye.
The Tunnel to Towers Foundation honors the sacrifices of America's heroes. Heroes like U.S. Army Specialist Andy Keith Kingsley. Andy was part of the 82nd Airborne Division. He received various awards and decorations, including a Purple Heart. While deployed, Andy was catastrophically injured in combat. Andy and his family received a mortgage-free smart home from Tunnel to Towers. But many more heroes, like Andy, need your support. Donate $11 a month and amplify your impact by donating your car or land. Go to T2T.org.